Hello.
Hello,
Yo, what up?
Hi. So I'm Daniel.
and
How
I'm
you doing?
Isaul.
How you doing? I'm changing my old business
Are you all
name
good?
real quick. One second.
Oh, is the Heritage stream was that I think I might have saw that on your channel like a few days ago, right?
No, that was a telecommunications business I started a couple years ago during the pandemic, where we were live streaming funerals.
Oh,
Oh damn.
damn. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I did that for about a year during that whole thing, and made it so that we would come and we would set up cameras and microphones and basically set it up to where people who couldn't attend the funeral due to COVID could basically um, zoom in and participate in the funeral. So
So, hey, could you turn on your camera? Oh,
Oh,
damn. You
you
got the
got the
whole
whole.
battle station.
Yeah.
Damn.
yeah, I was just about to do that.
Goddamn. So, you just released Type 4. How's the reactions been so far?
Uh Man, it's been pretty crazy. If I may say so. I'm kind of surprised at the reaction to Type 4 because, to be fair, I haven't released an album in, something like 5 years. And, there's kind of an old saying, it's like when you're hot, it's hard to cool off, but when, you're not hot, it's hard to get warm again. And so I kind of understood that there would probably be somewhat of you know, slow adoption or consumption of the new material. And but it kind of flew out the gates, to be honest with you, in the way that it did. It was among the bestsellers in the week that it released on Bandcamp, which was pretty cool to see amongst some of the other kind of more well-known artists, if you may give them that title. And I think my Spotify numbers have been on an uptick, which is pretty nice to see. And so yeah, it's been pretty cool. I This is part one of four, so for me, it's not like anything to celebrate yet because I have three more of these to do, and I'm just like,
So, damn,
So
I was gonna kind of
yeah.
answer the question I had next. I was gonna ask you, when's your next album coming out? But because right on because the first thing they always ask when you release something is when's the next thing coming. You know?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
So
just, yeah.
I would say uh these next three albums that are associated with Type 4, they aren't necessarily meant to be released in a linear fashion,
Uh,
although I would like them to come out in the order that they're designed to come out in. But Last of the Rhyme Lords is an all feature album, and it's supposed to be with all the rappers that I ever wanted to kind of work with in the underground scene that people always wanted me to work with, and all the suggestions that people have had, I wanted to try to materialize into, working relationships with some of these artists. And so, Last of the Rhyme Lords is supposed to be just an all feature extravaganza, if you will. Tour of the Orphan Night, if you remember the album, City on the Type of Forever, there's a song on there called Guilty.
mhm.
Yeah.
And Guilty is essentially what Tour of the Orphan Night, the album, would sound like if it was an album.
Huh.
And it's supposed to be a therapeutic deconstruction of Greydon Square. So it's a very sit in the chair, let's start from the beginning sort of, not necessarily in the way that the Compton albums were, where it was, more of origin and, kind of how the sausage wasn't really made, but how you guys got it, I guess.
Mhm.
This is
Yeah.
very much how the sausage is made kind of album.
Yeah. So I guess the main difference is you're kind of letting people in more, I guess, with these albums.
Yeah, with Tour of the Orphan Night for sure.
Yeah.
Because that is meant to be a very vulnerable, open look into why and how I got to be me and
Hmm.
why I think the way that I do and why a lot of people have a hard time with the way that I'm, non attached to certain things because to be completely fair, people don't like the fact that I'm not a partisan politically. People don't like the fact that I don't call myself a liberal, or I don't call myself a progressive or a Democrat or anything like that. I don't join political sides. They don't like that shit. They feel like I should be a soldier in the cause, and I'm a soldier in my own cause. You know, I'm a general in my own mission. And so to me, there was never a version of this that was going to survive the orphan complex, right? Like, I wasn't going to just join another group after I'd already had an experience joining a group when I was younger that was of a net negative to my life.
Could you talk a little bit about that? Because a lot of the people that, may listen to us might not know necessarily who you are, even though you're 1,000 times more famous than us. But
Oh yeah, no, it's all right. I mean, the reality is that, like, as an atheist rapper, as someone who has been very critical of conservatism, very critical of conservative Christianity, um, you know, government theocracies, the separation of church and state, like all those different things that I had been a champion of, right? I think people assumed that because I was very much targeting the right and conservatives and Republicans, that I didn't have as many critiques for the left, for liberals,
Yeah, and there's many you
for
can
Democrats.
go over. There's
Oh
so
yeah.
many.
You care to share
Oh
a
yeah.
few?
Like
I'm
I'm
interested.
such a big lefty, but like there's the
Yeah.
NIMBYs and your rap. I think it was in Toe the Line. It was the limousine liberal. You know those. Like,
Yeah.
they could
Yeah.
be.
I think there is a fashionable type of liberal or progressive, and then there's people who are functional and practical type of liberals and progressives. And I, on the other side, I think that way about conservatives. You know, there are theatrical, caricature type conservatives, and then there's some legitimate people with some legitimate concerns about legitimate shit.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't, because I'm not affiliated or associated with a camp, I tend to be able to look at what people are trying to pitch me, regardless of if I agree with it or not. I'm just interested in hearing what you have to say. And my problem with modern liberalism, in my opinion, is they're not really open to hearing what the other side has to say. They simply want to demonize it as evil, and that's that. Every portrayal of the ideological opposite's opinion is portrayed as evil. It's portrayed as you know, backwards wrong think that is, you know, has no place in the modern age. And while some of that may be true, there's some issues that they have that I would say that are legitimate issues to be considered, even if you don't agree with those issues.
Yeah.
And there has to be some form of a compromise in order for people not to just devolve into well, fuck it, let's just go to war. I don't know if I can cuss on here. What's the language parameters on here?
Good. You can cut.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Yeah. I tend to ask that before it comes out, and then I was like, damn, I realized I didn't ask. So, but no, I feel like each side, as well as people who consider themselves nonpartisan independents, you know, libertarians or Green Party or you know, whatever that they are, right? I feel like everyone has legitimate concerns to be considered. And when you completely dismiss those concerns because they're the concerns of the other side, it's not productive. There's no growth to be had there. Now, if you feel like you can't compromise on a particular issue, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that there's as many of those issues as both sides think that there are.
It sounds like, there's a version of that I've heard before. It's like everybody has the same baseline sort of needs and issues. And it sort of reminds me of that in a way. Because it's like, even if they are the same baseline issues, they may manifest themselves in different ways,
Yeah. And here's the thing. Unless we're agreeing that we simply cannot live with each other, right? Which is what I've kind of heard people say at this point. Like, I just can't live with a Trump supporter. I just can't live with a Biden supporter. Okay. If that's what you actually think, then let's skip the foreplay and let's get to the fucking.
Yeah. I mean, it seems
right?
like it's already been tried with January 6th, right? You know, or
But
the
I don't look at that as like a real sort of like some shit that was actually going to lead to anything. Like to me, that was a protest that got out of hand, and obviously there was, you know, lives lost because of that. But I don't look at it as something like it was an actual like insurrection attempt where they tried to take over, and like I don't believe that. That's not what I saw happen. I have people that I know who were there on the
yeah,
ground,
Yeah.
who were there.
yeah.
And what was portrayed, I've seen video from their phones. It wasn't like that. But of course, narrative is narrative, and truth be damned. So it is what it is. But I know people who were on the ground that I've linked up with since they've been there, and I've seen shit on their phone to where it was like, that don't even look like the way it was seen from the angle with the good cameras and all that shit. Like,
Yeah.
but okay, you know, it is what it is.
I mean,
When you're on a side, it affects you in a certain way. If you're on the left, seeing that January 6th, you're like, oh my God, oh oh my
guns.
goodness, oh yeah, you know. But
Yeah.
if you're an independent or you're, you know, nonpartisan, you're kind of like, okay, shit got out of hand. I've seen riots and shit get out of hand before. I did
Yeah.
riot control in Iraq, right? So I've seen some crazy ass riots get out of control. But that to me, you know, a little hot on the temperature side, but nothing crazy. I don't think it was anything nuts.
There's something I gotta ask then about that. Yeah, I see you lighting up. We
Oh yeah, absolutely. Good Norwich time.
we can't smoke in our building, but we got something a little more techie.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
These are called Jeets, or yeah, Jeets. I've never had them. I just bought them for the first time.
Yeah.
They're little like oil, and they have keef on the outside and on the inside, and they have like oil on the inside. And they're like these mini like pinner. They're not large.
So like
yeah. They
pseudo
come in.
moon rock.
It's like you ever had like a moon rock blunt before?
Yeah, I have. It's like
It's
the
just
mini
dope.
version of that.
Yeah,
Right.
no, it's just dope. So, I guess the one thing I gotta ask you about Jan 6, I do agree with you. I've been in, you know, I've done like the George Floyd protests, and I've seen how it is, and you know, portrayal versus the way people are on like actually there, and I get what you mean. But the one thing I gotta ask you is, what do you think about all the implications surrounding the major politicians who may have been implicit, bussing people in, encouraging people, that type of thing?
I think everybody who had a hand in contributing to what happened that day should be held accountable to the fullest extent of how they can be held accountable. But once again, I'm not going to view that justice through the lens of a partisan.
Of course.
I'm going to view that lens, that justice through the lens of someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight. I'm not a liberal prosecuting conservatives. I'm not a progressive or a Democrat prosecuting Republicans or libertarians. I'm simply a person, nonpartisan, non-affiliated, who's looking at the evidence that's presented to them and making a decision based on that. And if both sides are comfortable with that, then hey, that's cool.
So, you mentioned BLM in a few of your songs. I want to ask you, what's your biggest critique of them? Like, or what's your overall? Sorry.
my critique of Black Lives Matters, in my opinion, is it doesn't focus on where I believe the real issues are in the Black community. I think it's a nice way for non-Black liberals to feel good about themselves and affiliating themselves with the struggle and the cause. But, you know, when you get right down to certain issues, they don't want to talk about certain shit. And there's certain things that happened in our community that are community specific. And to me, it's very selective outrage when it comes to how certain things happen in the neighborhood and who's affected by those things that happen in the neighborhood. And to be honest with you, I really don't care about what Black members of BLM have to say about those things. I care about what non-Black members, the people who've hitched a ride on the Black struggle train. And I want to see what they have to say about the internal struggle of what we deal with inside the neighborhoods. They don't seem to have a lot to say about that because they accuse it of being whataboutism. Remember, I'm not on any side. So that claim to me doesn't mean shit. I grew up in the neighborhood. I grew up in Compton. I grew up gangbanging. So you can't whataboutism me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that don't mean shit to me. But it does mean shit for people who want to win the victimhood Olympics. And right now, that's the game. So you hitch a ride to Black struggle, And all of a sudden, now you're in contention for a gold medal in the Victimhood Olympics.
Do you think BLM should do more of like, because like in one of your songs you mentioned about how like they should go after like gang lords, something kind of like that happened I think with like the Panthers, right? Where I don't think they went after them necessarily, but they sort of managed to
Gangs
get them to
and
stop fighting each other.
well,
Something
with
like that.
respect to the history, the gangs and the
Yes.
Panthers didn't really coexist, right? When there was the Black Panther movement and the Black Solidarity movement, black gangs were kind of at an all-time low. When the Black Panthers were destroyed by the FBI, basically the vacuum that was left by the Black Panther movement, the Black Panther organization, and the Black Solidarity movement was filled by gangs. There was a lot of people coming back from, let's say, Vietnam, a lot of people coming now into their adulthood that had grew up on the message of the Black Panthers, but had nowhere to put it, had nowhere to really use that energy. And, it's not just my belief, it's a couple other people's belief too, but it's my belief that because of the vacuum left by the Black Panthers, gangs were able to take a foothold into the impressionable young Black mind. I'm speaking specifically of Black gangs. Latino gangs, they have their own issues. Every other gang culture and system have their own issue. But Black gangs specifically, if you have the Black Panthers during the 80s, you don't get the Bloods and the Crips the way you do.
So do you see that where most change would come from if there was like a new revitalized Black Panther group?
No, because I don't think it's practical in 2022 like that. I think it was necessary in the 70s. I think it was a net positive in the 70s, but I don't know if it would be a net positive today, because the reality is it's not black and white. We keep trying to make this shit about black and white. Those days are over. The people at the power class of society have both black and white faces in it. The distraction of institutional whatever is just that, a distraction to keep people at the bottom fighting so that they don't notice that the people at the top are taking.
Yeah, like the Wall Street bankers 2008.
It's higher than that. It's higher than that. We got to stop looking at the shit we can see.
I'll tell you a little story. I want to hear your thoughts on it. During the George Floyd protests or riots or whatever you want to call it, when the protests did eventually turn into riots, police didn't do anything to really curtail it. They protected the banks.
Yeah, they let the Nike shops go, H&M shops, like some like little payday loans, but they protected Chase Bank and Wells Fargo,
Citibank. All that shit had cops for days.
And you know what you're doing, and I'm not saying this is a negative thing. I think it's quite important. What you're doing is you're stating the obvious, which I don't think we do much in these conversations. The obvious statement is the police aren't there to protect you.
Yeah.
They're there to protect the power class. Now, the power class isn't just the rich elite. There is a class above that. That is what I call the power class. These are the people that, for all intent and purposes, money doesn't mean shit. They manipulate the money system and the banking system at such a level that money doesn't even mean shit. The laws don't mean shit. They know so many people at the legal and judicial level, judges and people who make laws, doesn't mean shit to them. This is why they can literally kill people and get away with it.
Yeah, that's what reminds me in Brazil when I think it was the old president Lula was being put up to charge for a bribery claim. I think the prosecutor for his case ended up becoming the new DA for the next president. And it's like, oh yeah, we have the prosecutor. He's now the head DA of the next party with Bolsonaro.
Just a revolving door.
Yep.
And that's what it is. At the very top of this shit, where you're talking about, positions that are appointed, right? FBI director, CIA director, NSA, NRO, all these different departments that are alphabet letter soup, and yet have these appointed positions with no, congressional oversight, no judicial oversight, no voter oversight. Like we're talking about the wrong shit here.
And then the special court cases with the NSA and overseas spying.
Yeah, like
court Like it's
They
it's
created a
unwatched.
surveillance system that violates most of our fucking civil liberties and shit.
Yeah,
And we got bogged down in a fucking culture race war.
yeah. While the Fourth Amendment's practically gone, all your search history just there on the open.
Yeah. But I get it. Institutional blah 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 narrative, blah blah blah.
Narratives. So, I guess I want to round it back a little bit to I guess to some music and about yourself.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely.
so I've been dying to ask, why base 4 albums off the Kardashev scale?
That's a great fucking question. I'm still asking myself that question. How the hell did I get to type 4? It started as kind of like a nod, almost like a. Okay, so let me back up. I got to give a proper respect to the person who really kind of set the seeds of this. Shout out and rest in peace to DMX, who taught me the legacy of the value of the legacy song. What a legacy song is, it's a song that it exists in the same world as another song. He did a song back in the day called Damien. I don't know if you remember this song. Damien was a song where he was talking to, I don't know if it was the son of the devil or a demon or the devil himself, or he was talking to somebody demonic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he did Damien. And then the next album, he did Damien 2. Now, I was 15, 16, whatever I was. It was the first time I'd ever really seen anything like this. Like, there was Once Upon a Time in the Projects, but it was a Once Upon a Time in the Projects part 2, but it wasn't by the same rapper. And so then there was the Art of Storytelling and that whole thing, but that wasn't also by the same rapper. So this was the first time I'd actually seen mainstream artists who, I liked doing something like this. So he did 4 of these, I think. He did Damien 3. I think he did Damien 4. So fast forward when I become quote unquote Greydon Square and I did the Compton effect. I knew I was going to do the CPT theorem because it was a play on of names. Then I get into this thing in 2008 where I catch that charge, the assault charge, blah, 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 and I get excommunicated from the atheist community.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a conversation with myself and I ask, okay, where am I going to go from here creatively? I could still talk about atheism and religion and critique religion, all that type of stuff. Sure. But where can I go that's my own? What can I do that would be unique to me? And I was already interested in the future. I was already interested in future technology and the singularity and all those different things. Star Trek, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was like, well, why don't I just talk about all those issues along with the atheism and kind of create a new thing, a new identity for this? And at that time, I was discovering the Kardashev scale and what it meant to be a type 1 or a type 2 or a type 3 species and whatnot. So originally, the album was going to be called the Kardashev scale, and I was just going to talk about those things on that album.
Hey, one sec. Just so we could we describe what the Kardashev scale is, just for people
Yeah,
who might be
absolutely.
watching? You want me
Yeah.
to, or do you want to? Because
No,
it's
I can
your
do it.
album. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hell
no,
yeah.
I can do it. I've explained this so many times now at this point, it's almost muscle memory. But the Kardashev scale is a theoretical civilizational measuring stick created by Nikolai Kardashev in the 1960s, right? He was a Russian astrophysicist who created a formula or a system in which he would calculate the usage of energy by a civilization and thus rate that on a scale, which he called, or someone else called, the Kardashev scale. There are different levels on the Kardashev scale, type 1 being a planetary species, type 2 being a stellar species, and type 3 being a galactic species, right? And so where we would rate on that scale currently is 0.7 technologically. And so if you notice, I have a song called 0.7, 0.8, and then I recently did one called 0.6. But these are basically where we are on the Kardashev scale, according to his particular measurement. Now, some people have critiqued the Kardashev scale as not an accurate way of doing this. There are some, critiques that are worth considering, but for the creative mind that I had, it was enough for me to create a whole, album behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so using that particular title and that particular theme, I was able to cover things like the singularity and, future technology, nanotechnology, all the different ideological evolutionary changes that we'd have to make in the way that we thought about things, gods, obviously, religion, and the way we thought about each other as people, right? And not divided into parcels of race. But ultimately, it was just a way of recreating and reimagining the branding of my creativity. And so that's kind of what the Kardashev scale was. And so when I did the Mandelbrot set, I remember I was writing a song on the Kardashev scale called the Mandelbrot set that never came out. And I remember thinking, like, this would be a great title for an album. And when I released the Kardashev scale, I remember getting a lot of people saying, like, yo, man, you should do a Kardashev scale too. You should do a Kardashev. And I hate that. Like, I hate the idea of like doing a this part two. But I figured if I was going to do a sequel, that I would call it something different and I would just make it a part of a series. And that series being the Kardashev scale series. So the Kardashev scale became type 1 and the Mandelbrot set became type 2. Once I released that, then it was only a matter of time before people started asking me, hey, are you doing a type 3?
Yeah, the 30-song collective, right?
Yeah.
That all came out. It's just
all came out at the same time.
Mhm.
And I make a lot of music. I know how to make music in volume if I need to. It's my native language, right? But I also realized you can't just make a bunch of the same shit. So each progression of the album, it got harder because I kept trying to write myself into these intellectual corners and trying to tackle issues that were, hard issues to tackle. So in type 1, I was very kind of general, even though I had specific songs about like Islam and, Christianity and stuff like that. But in type 2, I started getting a little bit more precise with what I was talking about and how I was talking about it. By type 3, I was doing songs about, the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, landscape cosmology by Leonard Susskind. I did a song called Infinities, deconstructing the concept of infinity from an anthropomorphized female perspective, right? Like, trying to write myself into intellectual corners just to justify the claim that I am an intellectual MC. I'm a thought-provoking artist. And then, of course, once that came out in 2016, I'd kind of swore off that I was going to do a type 4. I was like, nah, I'm not doing a type 4. There's no way. There's nothing really to justify it on the Kardashev scale. But if there was, then I would do it like this. And then, the wheels started turning after Compton Scattering because I was going through a pretty tough phase in my life when I did that album. And at the end of Compton Scattering, I kind of just put it out there. I didn't know if I was going to do it, but I did that song Resume Course. And people asked me about it and they were like, hey man, I really like that song Resume Course. Are you actually going to do a type 4? So I started putting songs away, started looking at certain beats. People send me beats all the time. So I look through certain things like this might fit, put it away, get into a writing mood, start writing stuff. But it wasn't what I would consider type 4 material until, 2019, the end of 2019, right around 2020, and the pandemic hit. And I wrote like a good chunk of type 4 or a good chunk of City on the Type of Forever during the pandemic. So that's kind of the story of how we got to type 4.
So I guess another question I gotta ask you, kind of off of that, is why Greydon Square? Why that name?
Oh, well, that goes back to my time when I was in school. And I I go through trying to explain to people what it means to grow up as an orphan and having a name attached to you that just doesn't really represent you. And the closest thing that I can describe is, in a lot of ways, let's say a transgender person feels like they were born into the wrong body, right? Now, I know some people are like, your mother called you Eddie, I'm gonna call you Eddie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's in like, but the relationship that I had with my mother is through the lens of an orphan. So I don't really assign a positive connotation to that name. Now, you're free to do what you like. I'm a grown man. I can take it. But ultimately, when I was in school, I was in this class and it was like an acoustic physics class or something like that. And I remember I was supposed to be paying attention to a lecture and taking notes, but I'm a bad student. I mean, it's just, I'm not a good student. And so I'm usually writing lyrics. If I hear something interesting in class, I'm going to turn it into a rhyme before I can really keep paying attention to anything else that the instructor or the professor is saying. So, of course, this was one of those times. And he had said something about the Greydon Square, and I wrote it down, didn't think much of it. So a couple of days go by, and, I keep my notes in my bag. A quiz comes up, and a question that I thought that was the answer to was asked. So I wrote that down, Greydon Square, turned it in. Weekend goes by, come back, get the paper back. The question was wrong. And I was like, okay, I could have sworn I looked at my notes. It says that. I'm looking at it. That's the question. I was like, all right, well, let me go up to the. So I go up to the instructor after class, and it's still like half a room full of students and shit. So I'm like trying to be smug and shit. I had a real problem like trying to prove people wrong in public. Like it was a real thing I had to work on because it was a really off-putting personality trait. I remember somebody pulled me to the side and in a social setting around like a bunch of real cool people, and they weren't none of these like I want to argue about everything and everything has to be a political. They were just real cool people, just not just chilling. And I wanted to turn it into some like let's debate about Christianity. And he pulled me to the side and he was like, "Bro, like you don't have to be that here. Like you're cool. Like everybody likes you. Like you don't have to. No one no one cares like that, and it really came, it really kind of hit me because I realized like I started seeing people and how they were looking at me as I was acting like that. And so, but this was before I had that particular awakening, right? So I go up to the instructor and I'm like, hey, you gave me you marked this question wrong. I got notes saying it's right. What's up? And he looked at my paper, he looked at the question, he looked at my paper, and he looked at me. He said, what do you have written down there? And I said, the Greydon Square. He was like, that's not what I said. And I said, well, what'd you say? He said, I said the gradient squared.
Oh,
Damn,
And
dude.
I was like, ooh. And everybody's kind of snickering and laughing. And because I was kind of a smug ass, like arrogant asshole in school, you know what I mean? And so like people kind of wanted to see me get that a little bit. And I did get it. But then as I was driving home and I was in my smugness and I'm pouting whatever, and I'm just like, well, shit, that sounds like a good rap name though. May have been wrong, but shit
still
sounds
right in some
dope.
way.
Yeah. And so I went home, and Google was still young, but it was functional enough for me to be able to search out if somebody had that name. It was 2006 or whatnot. 2000 in the 2005, 2006. And sure enough, I looked it up and nobody had it. Somebody had the name Greydon, but it was spelled with an A. And so I changed the name with an E, because originally I did write it with an A. And yeah, that was pretty much the beginning. And then getting people to call me Gray was a different story altogether. That was like people who'd been used to calling me, APOC or, other names that they had, picked up along the way. But it's like, I never really went by my birth name. Even when you're growing up in the streets, like everybody's got nicknames. No one calls like Charles is never Charles. That's a little knockout. That's whoever it is, he's got a alias. No one goes by Kent or Phil or no shit like that. You got to have an alias or some type of name that somebody knows you by. So
And so, what are some of your musical inspirations? Like, is there any like albums that really inspire you or artists in general?
oh yeah. I mean, I'm a student of hip hop. I grew up in hip hop culture, so a lot of my direct influences are hip hop. But just starting outside of hip hop, I'd go, Quincy Jones being a primary influence in his work with Michael Jackson. The Bee Gees, Phil Collins, back when he was with Genesis, and then when he went out on his own. I was a big fan of like movie soundtracks. So I'd hear music for movie soundtracks that I'd never really heard before. And it made me interested in different styles of music. I got into, when I was like 13, Wayne's World came out and they had a soundtrack, and all these rock songs I'd never heard before was on this Wayne's World soundtrack. It got me into fucking rock. I went to the LA Philharmonic on an outing with one of the group homes that I was in, got me into classical. went to the opera, got me in the opera. Like there was so many direct musical influences outside of hip hop that once I got into hip hop, it was like, oh shit, like this, with respect to the difficulty of hip hop, this isn't as hard as that. When you're a conductor conducting a 160 piece orchestra or whatever the fuck it is, and you got 7 sections of nonsense on top of each other, that is a far different endeavor than 16 bars on a beat. Now, obviously, you still got to be dope, but I'd rather have my job. So, yeah, direct influences from a hip hop perspective. I think Cannabis would be my Sifu, and he is the one that really validated me when I was coming up as a young artist, as like a young prospect artist, right? But growing up, I was influenced by people like Ice Cube, Redman. Obviously, I grew up in LA, so all the LA, like, West Coast rappers, DJ Quick, MC8, Above the Law, fucking J.O. Felony, Dog Pound, like, just all the West Coast rappers at that time in the 90s. Plus, it was, one of the peaks of the gang violence at the time. So you had a lot of gang music that was coming out at that time. So, it was that influence from that environment, plus my intellectual influence from science fiction and the things that I was interested in, and then the music that I was interested in outside of hip hop, that kind of all influenced me.
There's a question me and him want to settle between us. What inspired?
You're both wrong. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
Well,
probably.
That's the thing. What inspired Interdimensional Council of Greys? Was it Rick and Morty or like the Marvel universe?
Yeah.
No, it was the Marvel 616 universe.
Richards?
Reed Richards. Yeah.
Fuck.
Okay.
Because here's the thing, Rick and Morty
God
jacks
damn.
a lot of shit from a lot of things, and
Yeah.
they like pawn it off as like their original. And Rick and Morty is funny and intelligent for a lot of reasons, but it's not original. Nothing about it is original.
Mm-hmm.
It's very recycled. The nihilism of Rick Sanchez, I mean, we've seen that since fucking Parker Lewis Can't Lose. Like, the
Damn.
nihilism of the angsty high school, like everything sucks, nothing matters. Like,
Yeah.
we've seen that shit before. That's not new. You know what I mean? Like, Doc Brown basically alluded to that, right?
Yeah,
like,
dude. Hot takes out here, man. Hot takes, man.
yeah. Oh, trust me, I can go in on a lot of shit that a lot of people probably, ask me how I feel about fucking the Orville one time, and you'll get a vomit rant about how shitty that show is. But Rick and Morty, while it is funny and it has some things about it that are highly intellectual, it's a lot of recycled stuff. It's not something that I would call original at all.
God damn, that was some passion right there. I heard there was some real hatred in there.
Yeah, Seth MacFarlane not getting his praise.
No, that dude Seth MacFarlane, in my opinion, is man, look, I'm going to try to choose my words wisely here, but I feel like out of all the people that get canceled for the shit they did back in the past, this dude basically made a show where he made fun of essentially an older pedophile preying on a young boy for nearly 20 fucking years. And no one says a fucking word about that because he's a liberal. Fuck that and fuck him. And fuck that show.
God damn. I mean, that's, when you put it like that, that's pretty justifiable point, being honest. But so how have you been liking the recent Star Treks then? Because you did mention
I love them. I love them. Discovery, it's a top 4 Trek right now. I know some people, it ruffles a lot of people's feathers, New Trek and what New Trek is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And to those people, I say, you don't really get to have an opinion at this point because you just got into Trek. Like, you're not, you got back into Trek when it was coming out with Discovery, and we've been on this train back when we were beefing with Star Wars fans. Like, if you don't come from that age, like, I don't give a shit what you have to say about what New Trek is. And so I think Discovery is fantastic. I think it has 2 of the best seasons in all of Star Trek. I think it has some of the best characters, one of the best captains. I think Michael Burnham is an incredible character. It's the way it goes into non-binary family structures and, actual open gay relationships, and not afraid to show the dynamic between this couple. And, it checks all the boxes. Like, it checks all the boxes for Star Trek.
Were you into The Expanse at one point? Because I was a huge fan of that one for a little while.
My boys are trying to get me to the Expanse. That first season is a hard watch, but
It
I do
is.
recognize that it is a fantastic world of science fiction.
Yes.
And I do plan on finishing that show because it is, from what I understand, a top 3 sci-fi IP of all time. And I need to justify that, or at least have something to say if I don't agree with that.
They went all in on the science. I don't know if that will affect your enjoyment of it, but
Nah,
that's something
not really.
that a lot of people, yeah. Well, to be honest with you, a lot of it's micro stuff, but I think one of the cool things they do in that show is like using rail guns on ships
Mm-hmm.
and ship to ship combat, so they like poke holes. And it's, yeah, there's not enough combat in that show, but CGI is an expensive fucking endeavor, man. It's a
Yes, it
bitch.
is.
It's a
No,
bitch.
yes, it is. It's what, why everybody's always trying to cut costs, and that everything in Hollywood is about cutting costs, because that CGI shit is just so expensive per the minute. I mean, it's like, from what I understand, somewhere in like the $30,000 to $50,000 a minute of shit. Yeah,
Jesus.
like, to that level, and like, you're talking about like Marvel level
Yeah.
CGI VFX type shit. Yeah, you're talking about like 30,000. You're talking about between 25 and $45,000 a minute.
Yeah, I think it's just better when we just make a movie about filming people on bicycles. I think,
They go back to ET.
Yeah, like-
I like practical effects. I still
Yeah.
think the greatest Ninja Turtle movie is the one where they had practical effects. The Gremlins, the reason why it's a classic is because those practical effects really draw you in. I don't think everything has to be done CGI. I
whole
miss the
Star
whole
Wars?
Jim Henson. Well, I'm not a Star Wars fan, so I can't really speak
Oh.
to. Yeah, I can't
Well,
really
I
speak
mean,
to.
just the technicals, the it definitely, older stuff definitely looks better than the CGI. It aged better.
I was gonna say the new stuff. It's all CG.
Yeah,
Like,
it's all.
Well, let me ask you
downloaded.
this question, just as a person throwing a question back at you guys as Star Wars fans. How do you guys like where Star Wars has gone? Because people ask me about Trek all the time, and I'm like, I love it. And they're like, really? And I'm like, you're surprised. I'm surprised that you're surprised.
Like, I like Star Wars more than Star Trek, but it's just the movies I didn't like. The shows are better, but they're written by people who actually like care
Mhm.
about the old stuff, and just
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I don't think it's been good, just because of the movies being like retreads and using Palpatine again, and it didn't sit with me well. But the
Interesting.
Mandalorian is good. The Bad Batch is good. Yeah, on the show side.
On the game side, I think there's a little bit of a renaissance that's possible, because Star Wars games used to be like the shit in the early 2000s. There used to be tons of them, like the Old Republic, Battlefront.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I used to play the one on 64, Rogue Squadron. I don't know if you guys remember Rogue Squadron,
I'm
but I used
sorry,
to play
man. No
bro.
offense, but
I'm
we're not that old.
God damn, I'm old as fuck. I just turned 41, and that just reminded me of the fact that I used to play Rogue Squadron and Rogue Squadron
Dude,
2.
I just remember Mario.
I'm sorry to
64.
tell you this, but you're almost as old as me and him put together.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty good. I feel like I feel like I'm wearing it well. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, you're
Very
doing
good.
good. You're doing good. You aged better. I know a few 40-year-olds who aged like milk. So
Oh shit.
yeah. Nah. But I think the games, like, because EA was holding on to the license for a while and they weren't doing
Right.
a lot with it. But I think now that it's open, there's a possibility that we'll see a lot of really good games. I mean, like, we have a lot of shows, so there's potential for a lot of great games. But the movies are a little. I mean, Rogue One was good. I really liked the Rogue One a few years back, but I didn't really like the mainline movies that much.
So I saw The Force Awakens. Thought it
Mhm.
was great. I thought
Yeah.
it was great.
No, it was good. That one was
Yeah.
good.
But I didn't see the ones after that. And I'll be completely real with you.
Yeah.
Most Star Wars fans I know are never satisfied with the movies. The only movie you guys like is The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the
Yeah.
old ones. Yeah, you're not wrong.
That's the only, and not even just all the old ones, just The Empire Strikes Back.
I
Like,
don't
you
agree.
have
I
a
like the
conversation
old
about
ones.
Return of the Jedi. It's like, well, shit. Some people like it, some people don't.
I like
The
Return
original
of the
Star
Jedi.
Wars,
Yeah.
and so.
No, I agree with you. People really love that one because I think it's just because, like, a lot of Vader scenes and a lot of the good guys getting their shit kicked in for the whole movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty
That's a
much.
good point.
So
Revenge of the Sith wasn't that bad, but I still haven't watched Phantom Menace. I couldn't sit through that. Couldn't
That's a
sit
good movie.
the Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace?
Yeah. Phantom Menace is good.
It's a whole
I'm not a
fucking-
Star Wars fan though, so I don't
Yeah.
know what it's supposed to be. Like
That's
maybe it
true.
is whack, but I as a Trekkie, I enjoyed it.
It has more Trek energy for sure. Like it's slower. Does a lot of more like
Dialogue and exposition.
hell yeah, a lot more. So I can
And we
see
like that shit.
No, my attention
Star
span's
Trek, yeah.
gone.
Oh, do you like
Yeah.
the lower decks? I gotta ask.
I love the lower decks.
Fuck yeah, okay. That's
Captain Freeman is other than Cisco, she's my captain. She's like part babysitter, part middle management. It's so glorious.
good. Well, what do you want to ask me about Marvel?
Yeah, I mean Marvel's. I mean,
I'm a DC guy, so
you're
I don't
more
know.
DC.
Yeah, I'm a DC Vertigo guy. Like, so I'm more into like Lucifer and
Mm.
The Dreaming and Constantine,
Constantine,
Hellblazer. Yeah, that's my shit.
Mm.
Justice League Dark. If it goes into Justice League Dark a little bit, I might be interested, but I'm more into like, the Lucifer epic with Michael and fucking
Hey, did you
the
watch
Barn.
like the animated movies they released? The ones
Yeah.
you just see on YouTube? Yeah. I
Yeah.
saw a few of those, and I remember just seeing like the last one. Was it the Apocalypse War and like Constantine?
Did you see Constantine City of Demons?
I haven't seen. Is that the one that comes after?
Oh. No.
No,
It's
it
the one that comes before.
Before, okay. I know they have one before, then they made one technically after, and like Constantine, he gets like basically punished for like shit. Yeah, I haven't catched up with all of it. I'm like,
Interesting.
shit,
Yeah,
I'm just too
I
cheap.
haven't seen it either.
Oh man, what do you at least tell me you like? Oh wait, so you said you like DC, so you like Cyborg?
As a character, yeah, but I don't read any like comics related to him.
Mhm.
I just thought you liked.
I like him a part of it.
You know,
What's up? The
sorry.
tech shit.
Yeah, the tech shit, the cyborg shit. Yeah.
I mean, I like it, but it's not the thing about the Justice League and just the city level heroes. I'm not a city level story type person. I'm much more of a galactic or cosmic level story person.
You don't say.
So I'm very much more into stories that are, existential. And I just don't feel like the Justice League proper Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, they just don't do it for me like that. Most of DC doesn't really do it for me like that. DC Vertigo is where I really kind of cut my teeth in reading comics. I'm actually more into like IDW, TMNT, like that type of shit. You know what I mean? I think IDW has more properties that I would be into reading long term than, Marvel or DC. But DC Vertigo is where I read a lot of shit.
Sorry, man, not a Marvel fan.
No.
I mean,
there's a few things in Marvel that are cool. Like I read the Magneto comic. There's a Magneto run that I find that's really cool. This Magneto run that's pretty dope. But I read this Invincible line on Image. Everything else is fucking. Oh, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Batman crossover, which was DC IDW. I read that. Let's see. Everything else is Lucifer, Constantine, fucking Sandman, Star Trek. Oh, that's right. So DC in the 90s ran a Star Trek line, Next Generation, for like 200 issues. And I've read a good chunk of those. Yeah. I've read a lot of those.
Yeah, that's kind of where I started in the Star Trek thing. When before Discovery, I was catching episodes of TNG on like TV.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a good place to start. Here's a comic that I think you guys should check out. I don't know if you guys have you guys ever heard of a comic called 8 Billion Genies?
No, I don't think so.
Holy fucking God. Read 8 Billion Genies.
What's it about?
What?
8 billion genies.
Yeah. This is just wishes all day, huh? Just
no, actually, it's the premise is one day, for no reason at all, a genie appears for every human being on the planet and able to grant one and only one wish.
Oh God.
Oh damn! The whole planet would be fucking chaotic.
Well, they'd all be gone. That is gonna be
so literally the first book covers the first 8 seconds of this incident. The next book covers the first 8 minutes. The next book covers the first 8 hours, and then the next book covers the first 8 days, and they're now doing the first 8 months. So yeah, dog, it's silly as shit. You
Jesus.
gotta watch. You have to read this. I hope they make it into a Netflix series or some shit because it would be amazing.
So I gotta ask you something from my field. I am a journalist major. I wanted to
Okay.
ask you what's your opinion on like the media? Like, what would you like? Do you have it like? Do you
Oh,
think journalism right now needs to improve, or do you think like, I'm not
I
sure how to
think
ask
that's
that.
I think it's a fantastic question,
Yeah,
and just in the interest of complete transparency, I have a hard out at about 16 minutes from now.
that's fine.
However, um, the media and journalism in general. So I'm going to come at this from a couple of different ways. The first one is that I don't think there was ever a time in my life where I've seen such open partisanship and association to ideology in the media. I think people wear their affiliations and allegiances on their sleeve and they're not discreet about it at all. And I think it affects people's objectivity
Mm-hmm.
and their ability to not be biased. Now, there are some people who aren't like that, and they aren't as popular as the people who are. But for the most part, we've become entrenched into a half generation long culture war that started back in 2000, actually 2000. I would argue that you could trace it back to the 2000 election, Gore, Bush in the Florida Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
That was the opening shot. 2008 was open war, and 2016 was like the fucking sequel.
Yep.
And so we are now in the kind of third act of this culture war, and we're going to see how it plays out. But the
Yeah.
media and journalism and the people who are in the journalistic fields have all taken sides.
Mm-hmm.
They've all decided, like, I'm with this camp, I'm with this camp. And there are very few people you can kind of go to and find a neutral, unbiased, objective perspective on things.
Do you think on a level that that might be its own form of dishonesty though, claiming that you don't have an opinion when you might actually have one? Because that's the common thing with journalism, right? Is that we are supposed to divorce our opinions, but the reality is every person has them.
But while that may be true to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
I do not. Okay, I can speak only for myself, right?
Of
And
course.
and I'm not of any particular side, so the demographic or um, polling of this probably wouldn't be favorable to me. But I don't want the people who are telling me news to tell me news from a partisan perspective or a ideological perspective, regardless of what they believe.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I'm watching them for. I'm watching them to give me the facts of what happened. That's
Yes.
what I'm looking for. If you can't give me the facts of what happened on a point by point basis without giving me your ideological opinion on how this, and this happened. Oh, by the way, they're going to hell for doing it. It's like, I don't care about that, bro.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a shit about what you think about your sky daddy and what these two consensual people are doing in their own home. Right. But you would get that. You would get news people who would, oh, well, gay marriage is a thing now and the whole country's going to shit. It's like, bro, I don't give a shit about your opinion with that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is
Like the
channel 6.
like
You
the
know what I'm saying?
yeah, like the talking heads especially.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
flips on the other side too, right? Like you could see it on the left, you could see it on the right. But my whole position on that is just I don't really care what the opinion and the political positions are of the newscaster giving me the information. That's not why I'm watching them. Now, some people may want that, and that is a different thing altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But me personally, that's not what I'm looking for.
No, that makes sense. I agree with you. It's one of those things where it's it's like biases always come out in other ways. It's like the way you select stories and the way, but like even when you cover them, it is good to try to divorce your ideology as much as possible.
And you can try your best to divorce your ideology, but sometimes just that internal confirmation bias can show. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
with my professors in uni, like they'll try their best to not be biased, but I could tell like when one professor says one thing on topic, another one says another, I can see them taking sides. So like they're obviously on different sides of this aisle, and they say they're trying their best, but that confirmation bias is very strong. That's,
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess we're coming to the end of the interview. So
Damn, already? This has
yeah,
been really fun. We should do this again.
shit, yeah, actually, I agree. I mean, look,
What else you got for me? I still got a couple minutes.
Good.
I can still answer a couple questions
Do you
if you
ever
got
feel
some.
like your opinions have changed between albums? Like, you
Yes.
ever look back and think like, oh, where?
Oh
What's
yeah.
opinions?
Oh yeah. I think that I've become a lot more understanding of the flaws in my optimism from back then to now. There's when you're younger, and this is just I don't know how consistent this is, but I feel like when you're younger, the idealism that you have is drenched by the amount of opportunity you see with the amount of time you have before you.
Yeah.
And as you get older, you realize that that optimism isn't so justified, because if you extrapolate all the way out, that nihilism will kick in and you're like, well, none of this shit matters anyway. I'll go, everybody will go, the planet will turn to dust, we'll experience a heat death in this universe, and that'll be that.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to feel like there's an evolution in the way that you think about things. So there may have been changes in the way that I think, but I would argue that those are more evolutions in my perspective in the way that I thought, as opposed to just outright changing completely. I don't think I have any opinions that have just outright changed completely. I've always been a partisan. I've always been someone who has been affiliated or been critical of both political sides, as well as, religious institutions and any other type of groupthink, right? That I've thought that needed to be scrutinized. So, I mean, for me, the changing of opinions, it isn't a negative thing if the change is an evolutionary one, because I believe that everything that we're really doing is rooted in evolution in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when um just watching sort of it's like watching your position sort of get more, what's the word for it? Like more, it has more depth, you know? Like it's
A little
like,
bit more nuance.
yeah, nuance, that's the word. As you sort of develop it over time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and in regards to streaming again, I'd like to. We do game streams sometimes. Do you play on like any like do you play any games or?
Yeah, I actually run a Star Citizen org. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of Star Citizen, and I'm sure you have strong feelings on it if you have. But I run a Star Citizen org, and it gives me an opportunity to live out my space captain dreams. So, you know, Star Citizen being what it is requires a lot of coordination and um, internal structure when you playing with a group and stuff like that. So for the last 8 years, I've basically been captain of this Star Citizen org, and I do that pretty much full time. Like, I'm always captain, so I'm always doing something that's related to that. But when it comes to being in the game, we do play this game like once a week, and we're always in the verse and all that type of stuff. Other games that I play, NBA 2K, I play MLB, I play a lot of baseball. Like, I was literally playing baseball right before I jumped in here, and I lost to a walk-off 2-run shot to center left. And then I play a lot of hockey. I play a lot of NHL. So those are really the only games that I play. Every now and then I'll get a Battlefield itch or a Call of Duty itch, and I'll download like Modern Warfare or something like that. But that's like once a year.
I got a recommendation for you for
What do you
Battlefield
got?
itch. You ever heard of Chivalry 2?
No, I haven't.
It's like a medieval big warfare game. So it's like Battlefield, but instead of like guns, you're using like swords and shit. It's really fucking bloody because
Swords and shit.
swords and shit. Yeah. So yeah, I think maybe we should try that stream because we only have a PlayStation 5.
Yeah, it's we're not part of the PC.
We don't got a battle station.
Oh, no master race going
No
on here.
master race.
Okay, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
See, I play on Xbox One or Xbox XS or whatever the new Xbox
Oh, yeah,
is.
Series
That's
X.
the only system I have. Yeah, Series X.
Yeah, they got crossplay for that game, I think.
Do they really?
Yeah,
That's
they do.
cool.
Yeah, a little
I love
finicky.
any game that's crossplay related, because MLB is crossplay, and so I can beat the shit out of people on PlayStation all the time. So good.
Yeah, the PC gives you advantages, huh?
No. I'm talking about
Oh, on
when
Xbox.
on Xbox. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Because I don't think there's any crossplay that I have unless it's poker. I play poker, but yeah. No, I don't play anything crossplay on PC.
Do you play real poker, like real money poker, or just
Oh, I play on like Poker Championship online and stuff like that. I don't think I've ever sat at a real table
you
and
have
won.
an addiction?
I know. I like
No.
being
I
Texas Hold'em.
if I had any type of gambling quote unquote addiction, it would be betting against my emotions during basketball season.
Mm.
Are you guys familiar with this strategy? The betting against your
Or
emotion
just going
strategy?
against who you think will win.
No. So I am a Clipper fan, and I've been a Clipper fan my whole life, right? Ever since I was like 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 41. I've been through a lot of bad Clipper years. You know what makes those Clipper years bearable? Betting against the Clippers. So what I do is the games that I know we're obviously going to win, you know, I bet on the Clippers and I got a pretty high percentage rate. But the games that it's like 50-50 or we need, or I know because of the Clipper curse and group home kid luck that we're going to lose this game, I'm putting heavy money against the Clippers. And it's paid out pretty well. That year we blew the 3-1 lead in the bubble. Like, I never talk about this. I made so much money on that collapse. And the
Bro.
Clippers are my team. But it was just like when it was 3-1, I was like, I bet the Clippers are going to blow this shit. And I put down like an X amount of money and it paid off pretty well.
Dude.
So it was like,
You know
yeah,
the team. You know the team.
it sucks.
What,
It
what
sucks.
what if that's how some of those losing teams stay afloat? They just bet on themselves to lose.
We probably.
Hey,
Every
The
listen.
Angels should do that sometime.
Oh, are you an Angel fan?
Slightly. My friends been trying to get me into the Angels. I went to their stadium, and they're nice. Mike Trout's good. There's one other guy that
Bro.
was good, but like they lose.
Yeah,
They were just like
I
in
am.
a like over 10 loss streak. I think it was bad.
Listen, I am a diehard Angel fan. I've been a Halo fan my whole life. And the other person you're talking about is Shohei Ohtani.
Oh yeah.
And Shohei Ohtani is the greatest baseball player who will ever breathe oxygen. End statement.
Okay, man. I gotta ask. You like all this stuff from California, but you left California.
Yep.
Why? What's wrong with the
Politics.
state? Really?
Politics, man. I love rifles and guns and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's always the desert. You know.
Nah,
you
dude,
know,
our guns
Nah,
are
I
gimped
like
here.
being able to carry my guns on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I like that here. Arizona's awesome.
Ain't it a bitch how what they do to the rifles here?
Oh, it's blasphemous. it's
Yeah.
not even yeah, it's like I'm cool. I'm good.
Yeah.
Like I said, politics.
Yeah, if I was ever gonna buy like a rifle, I was gonna buy one of those. They call them like a FUD gun, an SKS, like an old
Yeah.
something that doesn't have a pistol grip, so the state doesn't,
They don't care.
come to my house and kill me.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
I think Arizona is the greatest place, the greatest hybrid of weed and weaponry that you will find in the United States, other than Colorado. But it gets too cold there in the winter.
What's your weapon of choice, or what would you say is your favorite?
I mean, well, I shit, man. I went through many courses of U.S. weapons in the Army, and I've obviously been a fan of the AR-15 for a long time, right? Because that was what I was trained in. But there's a couple of other rifles, like there's a Daniel Defense rifle that's like this 308 that's incredible. Like, there's a couple of like pistols that I feel like if I had just disposable income, like, yeah, it's just like, I would totally get certain things, but I prefer something that's just more practical for me and my training, and everything just goes off of the armed forces training that I had growing up, and whatever I have is just complementary to that. So
No, that's fair. We don't really we haven't shot too many weapons. We shot like because we never been in the army or anything. We only shot like
living in California, not many.
yeah, you living in the state with the
Yeah.
gimp guns. So we shot like some shotguns and some rifles, but like they're all like the
I shot
AR.
a neutered AR. That was
You want to hear how our AR reloaded? How California AR reloads? You might already know, but the way our friends had to reload was you take the the takedown pin to break it open, drop the mag in, and then you have to put one in like with it still broken in half.
wow, yeah, I don't. Once I moved from California, I kind of released whatever concern I had about their politics. I just Here's the thing, man. I can either be there and try to swim against the current, or I can just be somewhere where it's just more apt to where I am ideologically and the things that I think are important. And I love California. It'll always be home. I love the Clippers. I love the Angels. I love my Ducks. LA is still LA, right?
Mhm.
But living there in my prime, shit.
God
They killing listen,
damn.
they killing rappers left and right. You think I'm gonna take a chance living in California right now?
That's fair.
That's fair.
That isn't Arizona too hot? Like the California weather, it gets warm, but Arizona, that really high dry heat.
No, listen, when you've been to Iraq and it's been 122 and you've been in full gear, there's no heat in Arizona that's gonna scare you. None. And honestly, there are old ladies out here who are like, stop being a little bitch about the heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're on some like the heat ain't nothing. And Arizona really doesn't get that hot. Like 115, 118. That's not crazy. That's not crazy. I don't think, me personally, I love, like right now in my room, it's like 83 degrees. I love it like this. And I got a hoodie on. It's 83 degrees in here. I have a hoodie on. So
God
most
damn.
people couldn't be in my room because it's too hot. Oh, it's hot in here. No, it's just right comfortable. I'm cool. Now I prefer to be in a hotter area, right? I work out in the sauna, all kind of shit. So for me, that works for me. For other people, it's got to be like 67 degrees in their house. And that's
Yeah.
fine. I just don't kick it in their house like that.
Nah, fuck that, dude. I gotta work out like Vikings shit, like in the morning when it's cold and
Cold, misty.
Yeah.
fuck that,
Yeah.
dude. Oh,
Absolutely.
fuck. Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, not a lot of people go to Iraq for how long?
Well, shit, it was almost 2 years. So I'd served with two different units, but yeah.
So you saw combat in Iraq?
Yeah, I was
Or
with with two different combat units. Yep.
God damn. That how was it? How was that? Like, could you tell
I
us a
mean,
bit?
I'll keep it to 60 seconds because I do have to go.
Yeah. Sorry.
But I will say that the thing that I remember most was coming back to the States and understanding how different I had changed because of my experience being deployed, as it compared to civilians who had never experienced that type of situation. There's a comfort level that Americans in the first world have, that people in other places of the world just don't have. There's a safety here. There is a contentment here that just other parts of the world just don't have. And even in places in Europe where, people think it's more progressive than here and more liberal than here, it's like they don't really walk around with this air of like nothing can happen to me. Americans, shit happens all the time here and they still walk around like nothing can happen to them. There's an air of arrogance in American comfort that is so dangerous. It was the first thing I noticed when I came back. It's like that shit's gonna get you killed. That shit is gonna get you killed. That shit is gonna get you killed. And you see it happen every day. Person doing X does X and dies.
Yeah. And then there's also like the school shootings where like how you
Right.
gotta protect yourself there as well. Like it's
Right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. But then there's, you get into a debate as to what's practical and necessary and what isn't, and what is paranoia and what is PTSD and what isn't. And so, those are conversations I'm willing to have. But I definitely felt like when I came back, I just noticed how comfortable people in how civilians were comfortable, even though we had been at war for 4 or 5 years, whatever. But I came back in, basically at the end of basically at the end of 03. We had went there at the beginning of 02, or yeah, beginning of 02, because I had went in May of 01. 9/11 happened, and then we were downrange in February of 02.
Man, that's some shit ass. Man, you mentioned group home luck. That is.
Oh yeah, I tell people group
Damn.
home kid luck is real, and you have to account for it. Like it is a real thing. So, but I appreciate you guys having me on your show. Hit
Yeah,
me up
dude.
again if you guys want to do
Thank you
this
for
Hell
again.
yeah, man. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely,
You have a
no
good one.
problem. Peace. You too.